Viewers and listeners, I am Professor Dr. Iqbal speaking from Bazm-e-Sheikh Iqbal channel. I've been telling you about my career, about my life, and today I have to discuss my literary career. Now, it's very difficult for a poet or for an artist to analyze the sources of creativity. What I know is that it is something which is within an individual, inborn, as we have often been reading. The poets are born, not made. Yes, of course, there are poets who keep writing and get training from others. They have their teachers, they have the different other techniques they use. For example, they give a line and ask the poet to write in that line or in that bahr, which is known in Urdu, and we call it Tarhi Misra, which is not used in English. There is no Tarhi Misra that way, because in English literature there is no tradition of any mushaira of the type which we have in the subcontinent. So I personally feel that it's not the training, it is not the teacher or the guide, the mentor that matters in connection with poetic aptitude. It is no doubt inborn. Yes, of course, your tutors, your guides, your teachers, they may give you certain suggestions. They may correct you that you are wrong there and you are right there. That also plays some part. But what we know is that Shakespeare, despite many of his grammatical blemishes and dramatic techniques which possibly he could not fully follow, is supposed to be the world's greatest dramatist. On the other hand, Alexander Pope of the 18th century, who was very well known in that time, he ruled 18th century as a poet. He was the poet laureate, not in the court but with the public. He was most correct of the poets. He said that labor was his first and labor was his last endeavor while composing poetry. But despite his correctness, he couldn't become a great poet. He couldn't become that way highly. He could not write that inspired poetry. So there is something which is within us, within the poet, within the man, which makes him what he is. Now, so far as my career is concerned, as I've been telling you that I've been interested in literature. I was interested when I was even very, very early classes. When I was in Lahore, I memorized so many ghazals which my friends read out and which my teachers made me memorize. That showed a taste for literature, because I loved good verses. Although at that time I could not follow the verses fully, because poets, they are difficult. Verses, great poets write the way which we cannot even now understand. Iqbal's poetry sometimes even now becomes difficult. So is the case with the poetry of Ghalib. Anyway, I started taking interest in literature. I studied Urdu, book that was known as Sarmaya Urdu at metric level. That was really an inspiring collection of essays. I don't know of whose collection that was. At intermediate level, I developed my taste further, because there was Urdu what you call compulsory subject. So I read with all zeal and zest, with all love and passion, poetry and prose and all these things. But I remained so busy. I don't know why, because they say that if you are really having something within, it does come out despite all your involvements and engagements. But I don't know. I remained really much busy in studies, and perhaps I couldn't write anything. I couldn't go to the mushairas. Whatever I could do was that I used to listen to radio. Whatever, then there used to be mushairas at various periods, say on important periods, important what you call national days, or even fortnightly or monthly sometimes. But I couldn't attend any mushaira. I didn't like to go. Perhaps I didn't know. Even at BA level, when I was studying literature, I didn't have any liking to go out of my house except one mushaira which I attended. That was Kamran Mushaira, which was held every year. And although I didn't read my poem over there, yes, of course, at intermediate level, I wrote a few poems, 3, 4, 5, 6 poems. I don't know. I didn't have any guidance from anybody. And I gave 2, 3 poems to a friend of mine to show to one teacher, Yusuf Shadai. He was our teacher over there in philosophy. And the answer could depress me. My class fellow said, Shadai Saab said, oh, I was expecting that he would be writing something better. But that did not depress me at all, because I was busy with my classwork, with my college work, with my books, which were poetry themselves. Books are poetically written, good essays even. Then at BA level, as I just told you, I didn't go anywhere. At MA even, I did my master's at Faisalabad. I didn't go anywhere in any mushaira. But something kept developing in my mind, in my heart. That was love for people, liking for beauty, passion for something great, desire to soar higher, to fly without wings even, somewhere, to do something. I was not very clear about it. I was clear that I would take my master's degree, and I took my master's degree. And then the way I succeeded, I told you in brief in my previous talk. But then it was in 1978, when I was probably, yes, of course, 28 years old, I took part in a mushaira in Sargodha. I read one of my poems, and that was really appreciated. But before reading that, I was in mood of writing something. But after attending mushairas regularly, then in Sargodha, there were so many programs by Aghar Sardi Saab. He arranged so many programs on important dates and on important occasions. So there, of course, I started going, and I felt like writing poetry. Yes, I started writing poetry. I showed some of my poem to my colleague, who is now a well-known poet in Lahore, Professor Dr. Sheikh Rizvi. He said, yes, you have some potential in you if you carry on. He didn't comment very much, but he only said that, yes, you can, if at all you continue doing that. Afterwards, I started writing poems, and that was in 79. It was probably in 1978, 79 or 80 that I started writing. as I told you, and I showed these poems to a friend of mine, Sufi Saab, Sufi Fakir Muhammad, who is now not living, but he was very close to me, and he read each and every line of my poetry, of my poems, and guided me. But one thing which God had gifted me with was lyrical taste. And second thing was that I could pick up things and I could retain, I had a retentive capacity which still continues. Whatever he told or whatever Razvi Saab told or a few other friends told who were really poets, I never forgot. So in 1982, my first poetry collection was published, Sahile Tashnalab, which may be translated as Thirsty Coast. Thirsty Coast, Sahile Tashnalab. And if we symbolize it that a person who is quite close to the ocean, yet he is thirsty for water. He has water. As Kohli said, water here and water there, but not a drop to drink. Anyway, that poetry, then I got it published. It has some of the flaws which then could not be removed, but it was appreciated. I got second award in the book competition of teachers of the board of Sagodar Division. And then I started writing. And then, of course, there was a function in Wapda Stadium, Lahore, and a minister, probably the Minister of Culture, he came over there from Islamabad, and he also gave me a certificate acknowledging my services as a literary artist. That certificate is still with me. That is on behalf of the government, and he gave me some reward, say some money also as a token of love. That was probably 10,000 or 20,000. I don't remember at present. So after that, I started writing. I wrote Swaliya Nishan, question mark. That was highly appreciated, and that showed a great improvement. Even those who wrote on the prefaces, Dr. Khurshid Rizvi and so many others. I can't now here, I won't like to take much of your time in naming. So many people were there. That was so much popular that I had to get it reprinted, second edition of Swaliya Nishan. Then, of course, the journey of poetry continued. Ek Humsafar Achha Laga, Ye Kafir Dil Nahi Mana, Iski Yaad Aa Gayi, the last latest book of collection. Then, there are 10 poetry collections which I wrote. One is in Punjabi, Na Ishq Lika Lavi, although I generally talk in Urdu. And yet, how, I don't know, because I had some poetic love. I had the love for literature, for people, for languages. So that poetry, that book, that publication also was hailed by even my Punjabi friends. They wrote essays, they wrote the commentaries on that, appreciatory essays. And one book I wrote in English also, poetry collection, Love is No Crime. Love's no crime. Love is, because exact pronunciation would be love's no crime. So I am happy that God has gifted me with the talent that still poetry comes, verses come, and I keep writing. 10 poetry collections. I could not think even of the first. When I was writing the first, I was afraid whether it would be completed before my death or not. I never knew. But when you tread a path. When you start going, then you keep start going. And that happened with my life. And it was there all the time. In prose also, I wrote a lot, and the first practice which I actually was the road which led me to the destination of Urdu writing was my magazine. That magazine, that was in 1991. Sufed Chhadi, Mahanama Sufed Chhadi, monthly Sufed Chhadi. I had to write editorials on that. On each magazine, I had to write editorial, and that used to be, and that always is extempore. I never prepared before what I was going to give, I was going to dictate. So I started with that, and 8 different volumes of my essays or editorials have been published. 2 are related to the problems of the blind, and 6 about problems, social problems. So hundreds of topics I took, and that editorial of that magazine was widely read, has always been encouraged, people have always encouraged me. So I feel highly elate and delighted and confident that prose really became also my medium of expression. Then, of course, I undertook a book on John Donne, the personality of John Donne and his poetry in Urdu. That is the first ever Urdu book in the subcontinent, according to my knowledge. And then I wrote a full-fledged book on John Keats, Shakhsiyat and Shairi, personality and poetry. That also was welcomed and was hailed by the critics. Still it is read with love and honor. People love it. And of course, a book I wrote on depression, about psychology. That was my subject. That was not my subject, but I had all the interest in psychology. Depression, its causes, its remedies, that also became very popular. And then I got my essays, critical essays, which I was asked to write during my MPhil career. And those essays I named Iqbal, Bahazur Iqbal. There are about 12 or 13 critical essays, and I'm proud of those endeavors and efforts. People study those essays, those who study, they really laud and applaud the effort. So in Urdu also, my various essays, various, and even I wrote essays in Punjabi on King Lear, on so many other writers. And this book is going to be published now. It's Fikr Khayal. That is going to be published. That contains my essays in English, in Urdu, and Punjabi. So I also wrote in Persian some of the poems, which I showed to the scholars of Persia, Persian scholars, and they applauded it. So I don't know what I did, whether I did worthwhile or not, but whatever came in my mind, my passion made me write. My love for poetry made me go ahead. My desire to say, my wish to do, my craving to act all the time, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. I've used all my senses by the grace of Almighty. It is the grace of Almighty. One individual can't possibly do anything, but I can't overthank the divine forces. How kind God has been with me, how nice my friends have been with me, how loving my parents have been with me, those who guided me, those who moved me, those who motivated me, those who give me hope to go ahead, a craving to plod ahead. So these things, so much may be said on the literary career because I have tried to summarize it. So if you are interested, you can study my books and then you can yourself decide how far I have been able to do something. But if I have not been able to say something or do something, at least I have got pleasure by writing. Writing gave me pleasure, and pleasure is the great treasure. Your money, your wealth, your high palatial buildings, your galaxy of friends, and even the fairy queens cannot give you those pleasures, those joys which you feel yourself and you feel spontaneously. And that I felt when I write and when I have been writing, and inshallah I'll keep writing. Thank you very much.